David and Dan burst into your room and drag you out kicking and screaming. You're going to write the bells for us, they say. Good luck and have fun not pissing off the internet. So the bells, one of the biggest points in Game of Thrones where the story was decimated so terribly that it practically ruined the show. Is it even fixable? Can this be rewritten and still be satisfactory? Let's find out and try our best to see if we can fix the bells. So firstly, ground rules. I'm treating this hypothetical situation as if I'm being pulled into this writer's room, and I'm contracted to write this episode. I won't have the ability to make massive changes earlier on and in prior seasons, as I feel that would be a cop-out. Maybe just a couple minor alterations in Season 8 if I would even be in a position to negotiate that. I could also do a full script rewrite, but I feel as though just addressing the problems would be more productive and respective of your time. Going chronologically, we have Varys to deal with first. This issue is oddly the hardest problem because Varys' underlying issue is more in the fact that he's completely underutilized as a character. He has barely any dialogue scenes in Season 7, and he's essentially relegated to being a background character with zero impact on the story. So going into Season 8, he has fuck all plot relevance, and rapidly throwing him into this plot to subvert Dany and the Bells is jarring. Along with his sudden and expedited downfall feeling out of character given that this is a person who has survived for decades in the cesspool that is King's Landing. He has a fundamental self-interest in wanting to stay alive, and that's entirely voided in Season 8. To try to make the beginning of this episode a bit better, after sending all of these ravens notifying the realm that Jon is a Targaryen, Varys tries to flee Dragonstone, instead of just waiting to be discovered and captured. And before this, Tyrion is aware that an influx of ravens are being sent out, so he goes to question Varys about the contents of those letters. Although, he all but knows what's in those letters, leading to a climactic confrontation between these two friends. We had a hint of this in the episode prior where Tyrion was pleading with Varys to not go down this road, so following up with that build-up, I think it would need a more climactic plot point to properly pay this off. And not Tyrion coming out of the shadows being like, oh yeah, sorry that I betrayed you, and then walks away. Then prior to that, I guess he just assumes that his conversation with Jon was treasonous, so it all just felt sloppy. My change energizes this plot point with a more cathartic payoff, given that these two characters have been a strong duo since Season 2. They need to verbally clash with their differing perspectives, and to have a more emotionally explosive scene. Then after this, when Varys tries to flee Dragonstone, he's apprehended at the last second by Grey Worm, who was notified by Tyrion. This gives Varys way more agency in having that internal self-interest and wanting to stay alive. Again, I'm kind of just working with what I've got, and I'd rather Varys have a much more involved arc from Season 7. But regardless, this would then go into the death scene unchanged. Leaping off the plot point of Tyrion betraying Varys, this should at least give him an inkling of favor with Daenerys now. This is essentially going into an overall issue of Tyrion having an extremely inconsistent motivation in that he doesn't want Dany to destroy King's Landing, but at no point does he really give her a tangible alternative plan to take the city without immense bloodshed. Like, he's literally sitting on the knowledge of how to easily infiltrate King's Landing, and this should be a plan that he pitches to Dany. Tyrion in this scene should vindicate his past idiotic plans with a great battle strategy. He's technically made blunders in the past, but these mistakes were severely exaggerated and amplified by David and Dan manipulating logic, along with just Tyrion's brain, for different external reasons like making the war between Dany and Cersei appear to be extremely close. This obviously goes against his character, so I try to fundamentally redeem Tyrion here. This is the person who almost single-handedly thwarted Stannis, and Tyrion knows King's Landing like the back of his hand. He's one of the biggest intellectual characters in the show, and this should be the moment that everything has been leading to for him. A part of this plan would also synergize with multiple other major problems with the Bells in that the entire battle is just absolute nonsense, which I'll go through all of those right now. The first major one is that the Scorpions were basically turned off and posed no danger to Dany. This is obviously a laughable point in the writing, as it was just set up that these scorpions are very deadly, and Dany should not be able to dodge dozens of scorpions endlessly. She simply should not be able to use her dragon until all the scorpions are disabled from within. This will be the primary plot point that also gives our main characters major goals. I would pitch that Jon and Grey Worm would lead two separate teams, sweeping down the walls, trying to take out as many scorpions as possible. This also gives Jon much more importance within the Bells, as it didn't really feel like he did much in the original episode. He had barely any agency and influence over the story, and that's terrible considering that he's a main character. Helping Grey Worm take down the scorpions would make his significance within the plot stand out way more than idly standing by while people get killed until eventually running out of the city. While this is happening, I would have 5 other perspectives actively going on at the same time. One of them being Yara Greyjoy assaulting Euron's fleet with whatever ships the North, Dany, and the Iron Islanders have left. It seems really odd to shelf her character in the very beginning of Season 8. She's still a primary ally for Dany, and kicking her out of the story is basically the same as killing her character. I know she returns for electing the new king, but her involvement there was a joke considering that the entire development of her wanting independence was dropped. So keeping her around I think is integral because this would lead to her fighting Euron in a rematch. This also naturally solves the insanely bizarre plot point of Euron materializing in front of Jaime to fight him, and pivots it to a more personal point for Yara to carry out her revenge. This gives her character a much better ending for her arc, and now there's a tangible effect / follow-up to the plot point of Theon saving her in the first episode. For her fight with Euron, she can learn from her mistakes fighting him the first time, and uses her wits to outsmart this big lumbering buffoon of a character. To also make up the strength difference in armadas, I would have Dany helping the naval assault with Drogon since she'll be far enough away from the King's Landing scorpions. Which there are some on the ships, but the more she distracts the Iron Fleet, the more opportunities it gives Yara to deal damage and gain the upper hand. This as well solves the issue of Dany wiping out the fleet in like 1 minute, which felt very underwhelming and was comical in terms of David and Dan utterly compromising any tension in the narrative. The overall result of the battle on this front would be Dany's side winning, and Yara triumphing over Euron in a reverse scene of their battle in Season 7. The second perspective for this war would be a frontal assault of Davos and Tyrion, leading the Northern Army, Dothraki, and the Unsullied to fight the Golden Company. My main reasoning for having this fight take place instead of just waiting for Dany to fry them with a dragon is that Jon and Grey Worm will most likely need help disabling the scorpions, so piercing the city and overwhelming the defenses is a must. This would also give Captain Strickland something to do, and the Golden Company in general wouldn't be an irrelevant wet whimper of a fart that also invalidates most of the buildup from Season 7. We could also move Grey Worm or Jon into this battle so we actually have a character to follow, which honestly would be better here. Another big change within this perspective is actually waiting for the Dornish army to come to Dany's aid. Given that, they literally asked if they still wanted their support, and Dany not responding to them is mind-numbingly dumb. It feels incredibly forced for Dany to ignore them in episode 4, and this is definitely being done because David and Dan want to artificially raise the tension and the army seemingly being even. And this is at the complete expense of Dany and pretty much everyone's intellect. So at the very least, I'd have the Dornish army be present here, which would give Dany's side the advantage. Although, now that I'm staging an actual battle here, the way to make up this difference is to bring back the war elephants. This would give us a significantly more epic battle that this entire series has been building to, instead of one-tapping everyone with a dragon because David and Dan nerfed all the scorpions into the ground, which acts as an insulting contradiction in the story. So Tyrion and Davos trying to come up with a clever strategy to take down war elephants would be very exciting. And in general, the irony of seeing these two characters working together leading an assault on King's Landing would be extremely palpable. It's kind of funny that that's not really acknowledged originally. The result of this would be Dany's side breaking into the city, and Grey Worm or Jon helping the other character disable the rest of the scorpions. The third perspective in this battle would be smuggling Arya in with Jon or Grey Worm, and she's given the objective of capturing Cersei. Although, Arya knows deep down that she will defy that order if given the opportunity and will most likely try to kill Cersei. Jon, or definitely Sansa and Bran, are aware of the fact that Arya is a faceless assassin. She could be a major asset in this battle that's actually utilized, and it's also really surprising that she never speaks up during the War Council in episode 4 about this. I'll dive into the Arya plot later in the video because she'll have a much bigger ending instead of befriending a Deus Ex Machina horse. The fourth and fifth perspectives would be the Hound and Jaime infiltrating the Red Keep, and they would be partially unchanged. The main differences would be I would have Jaime ignore the whole Bell objective, which I guess would mean that this episode would need to be renamed, and he is able to get into the Red Keep in time, instead of going through that whole detour in which he runs into Euron. Literally, the only reason it's written that way is so that David and Dan could plausibly have these characters fight each other. And I'm using plausibly with 2 massive quotation marks. You can also have the Hound still chancing into Arya while in the Red Keep, as they wouldn't be a pair going in. But personally, I feel like this original scene where Sandor convinces Arya to leave is flawed. Primarily because Arya has only known this revenge and hatred for the entire story. It's all she's been striving for, and she even shoots down the chance at a normal life to pursue this goal, among other character-related reasons. So suddenly abandoning this because revenge is bad, don't end up like me, feels jarring from a character motivation perspective, along with it being pretty baffling that the Hound never brings this up until they're just about to kill Cersei. It seems like the only reason this confrontation happens at this time is to have Arya be in the heart of King's Landing, so that we have a perspective that witnesses the horrors while trying to escape. Except, I'd argue that Jon can easily fulfill that role. So my change here would be to either remove this dialogue scene about revenge, or honestly, I think it would be better suited to take place while Sandor and Arya are traveling to King's Landing together, and they have a bit of a heartbreaking falling out because of it. This could happen at the beginning of the episode. This would be a much more appropriate time to bring up this subject, and we'd still have that resolution between these 2 characters. However, I wouldn't have Arya abandon her quest, as there isn't a forced sense of external urgency to spur her into making a hasty but massive decision. Then I just keep Clegane because why not? It's fun, and resurrecting Sandor in Season 6 was really to only lead to this point. I love Sandor as a character, but bringing him back in Season 6 kind of just felt like fan service. Although, all things considered, there are way bigger problems with the writing to worry about than this. I'll further go into Jaime and Arya, but first, we have to address the massive elephant in the room that is Dany destroying King's Landing. The 3 glaring problems here are A, there's no inciting incident, B, she destroys King's Landing after winning the war, and C, she has no perceivable reason to destroy the city and the innocents, something that she notoriously has been trying to protect throughout the show as a major through line for her character. To properly fix this, we have to address all 3 of these things. For the inciting incident, I think the most logical course would be to save Missandei's death for episode 5. Having her death take place at the end of episode 4 doesn't feel like it serves much of a purpose from Cersei's perspective. She can easily use Missandei as a potential bargaining chip to give her side some advantage instead of using her death to taunt Dany. It felt more like David and Dan wanted to use the shock of Missandei's death to make a more powerful ending for episode 4, despite it not making sense. My change here would be, when Dany's army breaches the city and meets the Lannister force, a member of the Kingsguard brings out Missandei and threatens to kill her if they don't stand down, or they discuss terms of surrender where Cersei can be spared. I'd also have Dany be present in this scene where she's perched up on her dragon on a nearby rooftop. Things obviously go sideways, and the member of the Kingsguard slits Missandei's throat, spurring both armies to clash, and Dany in this moment snaps. Now, for Dany's mental state, the only plausible way to have her do this is something brief that clouds her judgment in a blind anger. We haven't had enough time to build her descent into madness, so rushing that in literally 2 episodes flat out doesn't work. Ideally, you would build up that development for an entire season, but hey, I'm just working with what I've got. So Dany, in a blind fit of rage, like a blind bull who only sees red, takes her dragon to the Red Keep and starts unleashing mayhem. This addresses the first 2 issues surrounding her destroying King's Landing, and for the third, I would slightly tweak Qyburn's negotiation in episode 4, where Cersei is holding the entire city hostage and will set off the wildfire caches if she loses. This would also be a major motivating point for sending Arya in to kill or exfiltrate Cersei, so she doesn't give the command to detonate the city. Whether that's a bluff or not is open to debate, but Jaime and Arya's subplot would be stopping her so she doesn't carry this out. And another motivating point for why Tyrion lets Jaime go is that Tyrion is aware that Arya will most likely kill Cersei, given that he's smart and can see through people's intentions. So Tyrion freeing Jaime is to save his sister and giving her an opportunity to go into exile. This would make the plot more exciting because it's now a race against the clock of 2 separate characters trying to accomplish the same goal. Going back to Dany though, while destroying the Red Keep, Dany inadvertently sets off the chain of wildfire caches that links into the city, just as her father, Aerys the Mad King, threatened to do. So the city ignites and starts to explode, and bubbles like molten magma. In the original episode, they briefly show that the wildfire under the city starts to explode, but that seems completely irrelevant considering that Dany already torched the entire city. So my change would still put blame on Dany, and also adds in an angle of misunderstanding in which people think she's more of a monster than she really is. Especially from the ground perspective, in which people assume that Dany destroyed the city with her dragon when it was actually a chain reaction. This wouldn't completely vindicate Dany of blame, as Jon would still be upset in her recklessly destroying the Red Keep, while fully knowing that Cersei had the means of also destroying the city. Then this would progress about the same from where the original takes place, and instead of Arya trying to get out of the city, it's Jon, as I've said. And to put Jon in a position where he's not on this direct road out of the city, he goes into the side streets trying to help people, like the honorable character he is. This naturally turns him around until getting injured by falling debris or explosions going off in the city, to which Jon's life is in danger and he has to escape just like Arya. Going back over to Jaime's side of this story, from an overall character perspective, I think it's really regressive to have him go back to loving Cersei. That completely undoes most of his character arc, where he breaks free from her toxic grasp and tries to do good things, which essentially acts as his atonement for the past. The way his arc is in the show feels like it comes out of nowhere, and I'd still have Jaime care for Cersei, but not going so far to revert his character back like 2 seasons worth of progression, and physically still loves her. So for Jaime, I still have him try to get Cersei out of the Red Keep, but he won't personally be going with her. I'd also replace Qyburn trying to convince Cersei the war is lost with Jaime, as that would be way more personal and would have a much higher ceiling in terms of quality dialogue. Eventually, Jaime is able to convince Cersei to just get out and start a new life, which this would be around when Missandei is executed, and Dany starts to attack the Red Keep. On their way out, Qyburn joins them, and instead of getting crushed by bricks, which is just such a baffling way to die, they actually get to the boat, and Qyburn and Cersei leave. However, after they're on the boat for a while, Qyburn removes his mask, and it's Arya. In this moment, Cersei doesn't even try to physically fight back, and they have a simple dialogue confrontation. Arya voices her frustrations, tries to make sense of her father's death, but ultimately at the end of this heartbreaking dialogue, Arya plunges the Valyrian steel dagger that started this whole conflict into her heart. This gives Cersei an infinitely better death that ties the ending and the beginning of the show in a more poetic fashion, and also pays off Arya's ultimate journey all the way from season 1. This is pretty similar to the whole fan theory of Arya using Jaime's face to approach Cersei and kill her, but that would indirectly kill Jaime, which doesn't sit right with me. It seems more logical and natural for Arya to use Qyburn. Also, doing it in this manner where we have a false sense of hope for Cersei escaping, only for it to be snuffed out, I think is the best way to present this plot point, as it's more surprising and gutting. Another big notable change here is that Jaime Lannister doesn't die. I know there was this line in season 5 where Jaime says that he wants to die in the arms of the woman he loves, but that doesn't mean that that should be his fate. It kind of just feels like blatant and obvious foreshadowing that's essentially undone by Jaime's character growth, or at least in the regards of that person being Cersei. So in my version of this story, Jaime survives into episode 6. I think the best arc for Jaime is to complete his overall redemption and to also take up the mantle of Casterly Rock, thus leading his house into a better future. It wouldn't be a bad ending if he were to die, but I think it's more narratively fulfilling for him to gain that maturity and wanting to start a family. And from there, he tries to right the many wrongs his house has caused throughout Game of Thrones, instead of getting crushed by fucking bricks. So yeah, this essentially wraps up all the major changes I'd make within the Bells if I was randomly hired as the writer. There are technically other minor issues that I would also have to fix, like the main one being dialogue, because some of it is pretty rancid throughout the episode.
To be honest, I never really cared much for them, innocent or otherwise.
But yeah, let me know what you guys think of all this in the comments, and if this video does well, then there are definitely plenty of other bad episodes to rewrite. And if you want to vote on which ones I do, then I'll eventually put up a poll on Patreon for you guys to choose the episode. Thank you for watching, and my Letterboxd, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description. Thank you as always to my top amazing patrons Logan Farmer and Simply Put.